Hey everyone, it's Miss Marissa here. Thank you for joining my lab today for our lesson. So at this point into our science lesson, you've created a food web and you've learned about producers, consumers, and decomposers, which leads me to the lab we will be doing in this video. So for our lab, we're going to be observing what might happen to the energy flow in an ecosystem when it is disrupted by a disaster. So let's go over our objective for this lab. I can design a scenario to demonstrate the effects of a change on an ecosystem. Let's pretend that the whole class is taking a field trip today. Every student is assigned to bring something. For example, Emily brings drinks, Ethan brings the food, Miss Luke brings the toys. But Ethan got sick. Ethan got took out by a tummy bug and he wasn't able to go this morning. So, remember what Ethan was bringing? He was bringing food. So what does that mean for the class? They're not going to have any food on the field trip today. And this is like a disease affecting an ecosystem or a community. If a disease or a natural disaster takes out one of the producers, consumers, or decomposers in the food web, it's going to disrupt it, and some of them are not going to get food. It's going to disrupt the energy flow. So that leads us to this question we're going to answer. How would a flood disrupt the energy flow in an ecosystem? Now it is time to gather our materials for our lab. So what we need is a container for water. So I used a small casserole dish, and it's clear so you can see what's inside of the dirt, but you don't have to do that. You can just use any container that you can spread stuff out in. So one container, you need 4 cups of water, and then you need 2 cups of dirt or sand, soil, whatever you want to use, 2 cups of that. And then you want to have 3 leaves. So these are going to represent our organisms. So you need 3 leaves. And this will represent our plants or our producers. And then we have 3 popsicle sticks, and these are going to represent hawks or consumers. And then I'm just using 3 coins. It doesn't matter what kind of coin. I've got 2 nickels and a quarter, so it doesn't matter. So we just need 3 coins, and these are going to represent our fungi or our bacteria, which is our decomposers. So now that we have went over our instructions, let's begin setting up our materials. All right, at this point, we're going to go ahead and pour in our 2 cups of dirt and just kind of spread it along the bottom. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now we're going to insert our popsicle sticks, which represents our hawks. And we're just going to stick them in kind of like trees. Oh, look! There's a live character. Now we're going to insert our leaves. I'm just going to stand them up like trees or plants. And you can put them wherever you want to. But I like to just spread them out like this. Then we're going to just lay our coins down. At this point, I want you to pause the video and answer our question. How will a flood affect the organisms and energy flow? We're going to add our 2 cups of water. And after you add your 2 cups of water, go ahead and take this time to pause the video and write down some things you notice. Now we're going to add our other 2 cups of water. So what 3 organisms did we have? We had the leaf, the coins, and the popsicle sticks. So what do we see? What happened to the leaf or the producer? You can still see some of it. I see 1, and I'm not seeing any. Okay, so the flood took out most of the plants. Okay, now what about the hawk, the producer? I still see those, but they're laying down. They almost got took out. So we still have our hawks, but what about our decomposer? I don't see any decomposers. It looks like all of the coins is buried in the water and soil. So let's take a minute to summarize what happened. And I want you to write down on a sheet of paper what happened. What happened to your organisms? Think about your question. And you can go ahead and think about your prediction. How would a flood affect the energy flow and the organisms? So go ahead and take a minute to think and write down your conclusions and the answer to the question. How would a flood affect energy flow and organisms? So you're going to write down how the water in the lab simulation affected your materials, which are your organisms. Great job on completing the lab. So let's go over a little bit about what we've done today in this lab. So our question that we addressed was, how would a flood disrupt the energy flow in organisms in a food chain or an ecosystem? And we learned in our lab that a lot of it, during a flood, a lot of it would be wiped out. We would have organisms left with no food. The energy flow would be disrupted. Plants, producers would be washed out. Consumers would be washed out and left with no food. And even decomposers. And going back to our learning objective for today, we nailed our learning objective today. It's exactly what we did in our lab in this video. And to remind you, our learning objective is I can design a scenario to demonstrate the effects of a change on an ecosystem. In our lab, it enabled us to demonstrate a flood in our little ecosystem and what happened to the different organisms. Now I'm going to leave you with some things to think about. So in our lab, we worked on a flood and the effects that a flood would have. Well, what about other natural disasters? What do you think would happen if a fire happened or a disease broke out? It's something to think about. You could think of other scenarios. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my lab today. Have a great day.